Welcome to Queen Elizabeth Sixth Form College and the History Department in particular. My name is Gary Darby and
James.
This is James Stubbs, and we're history teachers here at QE, and we're going to tell you a little bit today about the history courses, about what it's like to study history. In fact, we're going to go through 20 frequently asked questions, and hopefully that should give you a lot of information about QE. We sat here in one of our history classrooms. Actually, this is where we teach Tudor history, and remember you have a choice of two courses at QE, modern history or Tudor history. You can see these posters here that tell you a little bit more about that. More details on the website, but we'll answer some questions as well. Okay, so we sit in 2 meters apart. This is a virtual event, okay? Can I also say welcome to Bridging Week? There's lots of activities going on. We'll talk about that in a little while. But let's start with the first question. So we have a collection of frequently asked questions here, and we're just going to pluck one at random from the pile and give you an answer. James, would you like to go first?
I'll go first with the first very simple question to answer. How many teachers teach history? 5. Done. Gary,
Okay.
yours.
Right, next question. Why study history? Tell me about career prospects. History is the most enjoyable and varied subject you could hope to study. It really is. It's like having the keys to the TARDIS, studying history. You can go back and study lots of different time periods. It really is enjoyable, and you can't understand the present without understanding the past. Also, it's very well respected by employers, by universities. It develops lots of different kind of skills, and it leads on to lots of different careers. You don't think you're going to become a history teacher necessarily. Not that that's a bad thing if you're studying history, but you can go on into management, into a whole array of different careers. In fact, history is one of the best non-vocational degrees to do to lead on to a good job. Biology is the other one.
History is the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's good to do in its own right, but there are a whole host of reasons for doing history, not least of which we get very good results, but more about that in a little while.
Is that one of the questions? Right, my next question. How is QE different from school? Do you know what? I think the best way to explain that is probably how you'll have a different relationship to your teachers. Don't call either me or Gary sir, because we'll probably do a silly salute or something like that. You would call me James, and you would call Gary, and you would call your teachers by your first name. There's no uniform, there's no bell, you make your own time management skills, stuff like that. You're also allowed a degree of freedom. You know, yeah, of course we're going to set you tasks, of course we're going to get you through these A-levels, we're going to steer you through those. But you'll have free time on your timetable, and it's up to you to manage that. In that block timetable, chances are there'll be like a free session on the morning. You want to lie in that day and you can get in later on. No problem, as long as work's getting done. Or you can have a longer lunch one day. Go down into town. We don't kind of make you sign into the building and you have to stay here until the end of the college day. You can come and go as long as you make it to your lessons as you please. Anything else you can think of?
Well, no bells, no school uniform. You know, I'm sorry. It's different at school. You know, we treat you're more grown up, and we treat you like that. Though we still obviously expect you to work hard and get the best results you can. But you will notice the difference. And of course, you'll be mixing with people from lots of different places in the the surrounding area. And
you leave with like a million friends. You're never going to stay in one social bubble. It's not like that at QE.
That's true, and lots more opportunities, and lots more opportunities to study different subjects, and of course study 3 subjects.
One thing I would like to say, actually, just thinking about, it sounds odd, thinking about beyond QE, but universities often will say that students who come to a sixth form college like this are in a much stronger position to make the jump to university at the end of college, because you've got that kind of campus feel around QE, and you're not restricted to the school, you're not calling your teachers sir, miss, all this sort of stuff. So you're more ready to make that jump into university as well. So if you want a life-changing event, then QE is probably more for you. It's beyond school, it's better than school.
And it's a great place to study. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I've been here more than 20 years, and it is a great place to be. Now, next question, what's the average class size at QE? I can do this one fairly quickly. Last year, our average class size for first years was 23. Our average class size for second years was 20. You know, there's good sized classes and it enables you to get debates going and things like that. So,
Yeah, you don't want a class that's too small.
Exactly, yeah.
There's not chemistry, you want chemistry.
Yeah.
Not subject chemistry.
If you want history,
feel free to do chemistry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Chemistry's very
Yeah,
good too,
that's
but
fine.
we do physics.
Right, I got another quick fire question right here. Do I need to buy my own books? No. Because as you might be able to see on the shelf there behind us here, this is a very small sample of the amount of books we have in QE that are available for you guys to borrow. The library is a great resource. I'm pointing in the direction of the library and you can't see it. But hundreds of books, thousands of books, whatever. I would say that we're quite knowledgeable in recommending texts as well. We tend to know
We give you reading
where
lists.
to look and who to read, you know.
There are information on the QE website as well if you want to do a little bit of background reading. You can have a look at some of the books that we recommend there. Next one, how many students study history at QE? This year there were 301. Okay, so it's a big subject, it's a popular subject, it's a successful subject. Okay, so it's a big subject.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right, right, what events are planned for Bridging Week? Right, now you said you might say a little bit more about that in this video, but yeah, that's great. Obviously we're not doing Bridging Week just this week, this time, in the way that we normally would. We'll meet in time, we'll meet in person at some point down the line, don't be afraid of that. But in terms of the events we've got this week, we've got a quiz coming your way with the chances of winning a prize. There's a music round, a picture round, general knowledge
the artifact round. That's happening tomorrow. Yeah.
So you've got a quiz to look forward to. I hope you like the picture round, but best round by far. There's also a time capsule competition coming your way, for which I've had to dig up my garden. More on that on Wednesday for that. Wednesday for the time capsule activity. I'll say more about that in that video. Behind the scenes video as I bury it, but that's about representing our life in lockdown for the benefit of future historians, and how might you leave something for a future historian to kind of encapsulate your life in this odd time.
Thursday we've got the debate.
The debate, for which I'm very fired up.
Well, I'm the referee. We have two
Liam knows
teachers,
what's coming.
James and Liam, are going to be debating an issue about the causes of the Second World War, and I'll be refereeing that.
No, you'll be saying I've won.
Well, we'll see. And History Club is something I'll talk about a little bit more on Thursday. It's a monthly event. We do loads of different things. History isn't just modern or Tudor. There's so many different periods you can study, and that's what History Club does. We try and open things up. So that will be happening on Thursday, and then on Friday, 3 o'clock, I think it is
Zoom webinar.
A Zoom webinar.
Where you get to tune in and ask us questions in real time.
And we'll announce the winners and the answers and everything else on that day. So if you like,
and who gets the vouchers?
And who gets the vouchers?
That's
yeah,
right.
and the winning prizes. So a fun-packed week. I know it's a little different from normal. It's virtual, it's online, but please do join us for those. And they're a lot of fun, and you could win a prize. Can I do both modern and Tudor history? The answer to that is no. You have to do one or the other. We offer two courses. We'll talk more about what's in each one in a little while. But essentially, these are the same qualification. They both lead to a history A level. So you couldn't do both. They develop the same skills. They're often taught by the same people, and it leads to a history A level. So one or the other. You just specialise in a period and do content that will engage you more. So unlike some of the colleges where you do one course, at least you get a choice of period, so you can do either modern or Tudor.
Might be worth saying in your second year you could do what's called an extended project, which is not part of history, it's an extra thing, but lots of our students who love history so much that they might have asked that question. They might want to do both of the histories. Lots of the modern guys will do maybe the witch craze as their EPQ, or vice versa. Sometimes the Tudor students will want to do something on the Empire or Germany or Nazism or something. Okay, my next question. I've got 4 left. Do you go on trips? Now I could answer that one very quickly, or I could go on for quite a while. Yes is the quick answer. Where do you want to go is the next answer. 13 weeks ago, I believe it was, we were returning from Berlin, which was an experience in itself, but more on that later. Rome we've been to many times. We do kind of more local stuff as well. We've got Leeds Armouries, we've been to London before. We've been to Fountains Abbey numerous times, Hartlepool Marina, which is a fantastic little trip that we run every 2 years, where you get to go on an East India Trading Company ship and look at life in the maritime empire.
One thing we try and do is offer a foreign trip every 2 years. So during your time here in college, you have an opportunity if you wanted to sign up and go abroad. Yeah. Okay, next one. What are the exams like? How many are there, and when do you do them? We do for each option, modern or Tudor history. There are 3 papers, and there are 3 exams for each of those papers. They're done at the end of 2 years. So at the end of your 2-year course, you would sit 3 papers. 2 of those
10 days apart, 7 to 10
something
days
like
apart.
that, yeah.
Revision time.
They last about 2 of the papers last 2.25 hours. One is slightly shorter, an hour and a half, and they have source questions, essay questions, you know, as you'd expect, that kind of thing.
Interpretations too.
Interpretations and extracts for how historians disagree. 80% of the course is examined at the end of 2 years. The other 20% is coursework, and we'll have a little talk about that in due course. Okay, next
My question, right. What are the facilities like at QE? On the surface, you know, you pull up to QE and you see this big old Victorian building, which is a great sort of history source in itself, and you think, oh, that's quite an old looking place. But inside, it's very modern, very different maybe to that kind of outside perception. And most of the college behind us here is a new wing where you'll find kind of facilities for any subject you might want to do. Upstairs is art, everything you could sort of want.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, it's some fantastic facilities.
Yeah.
We've got 3 classrooms for history, haven't we? We're in the, this
2
is where we
upstairs,
tend
1 down.
to do Tudor history. We've got another 2. If you've
Library,
been,
atrium,
yeah,
computers galore.
yeah, and if you've been to an open evening, you might have had a look around the college and you'll have seen it for yourself. But have a look on the website. There really are some fantastic spaces here. Yeah. Okay. How is history taught? Well, in a variety of ways. People learn in different ways. We try to teach in different ways to engage people. Sometimes we might be, one of my favourite ways is debates, trying to split a class into 2 teams, debate an issue, maybe even have a student jury decide who wins. We might be looking at some newsreel from the 1930s. We might be doing pair work. We might be doing all kinds of things. So it's done in different ways. It's quite a literate subject. You will be reading books, you know, you can't get away from that. You will be writing at length essays. Each essay that we write is about 45 minutes. We try and have as varied a programme of teaching as we possibly can.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's kind of as varied as your imagination, really. If there's a way in which we can teach a concept, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Historical plays I've done before, where I've asked students to kind of write an episode of a historical film, you know, where Mussolini's been deposed and arrested, that kind of thing. I've even been asked to star in them before. I had to be Mussolini for some reason, don't know why. So yeah, it's as depth as your imagination goes, really, in terms of how we teach.
If you enjoy it, you'll probably learn more if you engage with it, and that's something we very
I believe you've been in disguise a few times.
I probably have, yeah.
Speed dating,
yeah, we've done
Tudor history, speed dating or something,
all
whatever
sorts of things we've done. Absolutely.
You name it, we've probably got something in the toolbox.
Right, next one is...
That was your question, that's one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My
Yes,
question. A fairly simple one, I'll do this one quick, sorry guys. How do I find out more about history at QE? Couple of ways. Our new bridging website is probably the fastest and easiest in the current environment. We've built that at great lengths for you. You know, we've got sample lessons for every single paper that Gary's already told you about, as you can see behind us as well. So you could sample what paper 3 Witches is like, you could sample what paper 3 Empire is like, have a look at Mussolini, have a look at Martin Luther. There's loads of stuff on there. There's a couple of video lessons on there that either myself or Gary or Liam's delivered during the lockdown phase, so you can get a flavour of what we are like maybe in the classroom. But ultimately, in the short term, you've got our email addresses on that website as well. Mine is jstubbs@g.qeliz.ac.uk.
G-Darby with an A at qeliz.ac.uk.
Yeah, but they're up on the website, and look, just drop us a line really and we'll tell you whatever you need to know. I think it's fair, isn't it?
Yep. Next question, what are your exam results like? Really, really good. If I just take the last 3 years, we haven't had any fails, and we're a big subject. We have over 300 students each year, 100% pass rate. Last year we had a 63% A and B rate, so 63%. The majority of students got an A or a B grade at A level, which was very
10%
good.
higher than the national average as well.
10% higher than the national average. That's
Okay,
absolutely right. And you know, we've been fairly consistent over the last 3 years at that level. So, you know, really good, and we're quite proud of those. So, yeah.
Quite proud, I imagine.
Very proud. I have to
I'm
say,
hugely
yeah,
proud
it
of
is.
those results.
They are very, very good indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next
My
one.
last question. I don't know how you divided these.
I don't know.
There's some left though.
History is
That's
my
some of
subject,
them.
maths. Okay, so.
Right. Do I need GCSE history to do history at QE? What are your entry requirements? Very good question, and a question we get asked quite a lot. Don't ever think if you didn't do history at GCSE that you are barred from doing history at A level. Okay, absolutely not. We totally understand that lots of schools out there kind of make you either do geography or history. You might love both. I did both in my A level. I genuinely loved geography and I genuinely loved history. I still do, and it's been a battle throughout my life as to which one to do. But no, the short answer is no. If you haven't done history at GCSE, as long as you can say you've got a grade 4 or above in English, you can come and study history here. And there's nothing in our exit profile, the grades that we're getting that Gary's just told you about, that suggests that you're at any disadvantage if you haven't already done history. And the entry requirements, we want you to have passed history.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
If you've done history,
Yes.
we want you to have passed it,
If-
when you
if
get a
you've
grade
done
4
it.
above.
If not, default to an English grade, because it's a literary subject.
And yeah, and there are many students who haven't done history GCSE and go on and do a history degree after
That's
doing
right.
history A level here.
That's
So you know, it's certainly not a barrier. And please do look at both courses carefully, Tudor and modern. Sometimes people who've done GCSE history think, I'll do modern history because I've done a bit of that at GCSE, and that's absolutely fine. You do it in more depth, more detail, plenty of new stuff in the modern course. But have a think about the Tudor course as well and doing something different. Actually, that leads me on to my next question. What is covered in each course? Now, if you were to do the Tudor history, very quickly you'll be looking at the Tudor mnemonics, so you'll be looking at Henry VIII, you'll be looking at Edward the Boy King, Mary and Elizabeth I, and you'd also look at a guy called Martin Luther, a German monk who split the church in the 16th century. In the second year you look at the witch craze from 1580 to 1750, 5 case studies of witch trials in Europe, in Britain and in North America, like Salem witch trials. You look at Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, some fantastic stuff. Modern history course, for that one you'll be looking at Germany from 1918 to 89, so that would be Weimar, Nazi Germany and West Germany. You'll be looking at Italy and the rise of fascism, 1911 to 1946. And in the second year where you do the witches, in the modern course, there you'll be looking at the British Empire, 1763 to 1914. And you'll be looking at things like America and the American War of Independence. You'll be looking at Australia, you'll be looking at Canada, India, Egypt, the Royal Navy, Captain Cook, British trade, some fantastic stuff in both courses. So really,
Quite
really
exotic as well, the locations we look
yeah,
at.
we do.
Bamberg, Trier and the
All
witch
over the
craze,
world
and
and
over
all
the witch
great
craze in
stuff. Yeah.
Europe, yes.
And so you really need to think carefully which of those courses are it, which of the periods appeals most. Doesn't really matter which you choose. It's entirely up to you, but 2 fantastic courses.
Coming on from that question, what about what's covered in each course, is this question, what about coursework? So if I reel off what we do more so in the modern coursework, and perhaps Gary, if you could say more about the Tudor. Coursework, Gary's already said, is 20%. It is like an extended essay. At the start, you know, you might think, that's an awful lot to write. But by the time you get into it, you think, how on earth am I going to cram this into my word limit? Which happens every year, I think, for all of our students. For modern history, we've got 3 historical controversies that we look at, and again, some more details are up on the Bridging website that I've told you about. But it's ultimately 3 questions, 3 areas of historical controversy, which have simply never been answered. They're potentially unanswerable, and you've just got to come up with your interpretation of this. It's first and foremost, was Weimar doomed to fail? Was that a viable state? Secondly, you've got whether Hitler was a weak dictator or a lazy dictator. You know, it's easy to see Hitler as this kind of Star Wars empire, you know, emperor kind of figure, you know, what Hitler says happens, but the reality is a bit more cloudy than that. And finally, you've got whether or not the Nazis created the social revolution, which is a wonderful question, the most popular this year actually. You know, normally there's a bit of a split, but everyone rushed to social revolution this year, which is great because that's one of my favourites. And that's kind of peeling back this layer of Nazi propaganda where we've got these cheering crowds and everybody looks like they support Hitler, and to think, well, actually did they? And was that lasting change, or was that just a surface kind of saying, yeah, I agree with Hitler, but please don't put me in that concentration camp?
We do the coursework in the second year, and you do it for most of the year. You'll start by having some taught lessons, some traditional taught lessons. Then there'll be some research. We actually ask you to read not textbooks, but actual history books written by historians, articles or chapters, and you'll be reading at least 10 of those. And then we start the writing process. We guide you through each stage. James told about the modern course. As far as the Tudor coursework goes, again, 3 questions. You'll be looking at whether the English Reformation was a popular movement. So you'll be looking at religion in the reign of Henry VIII and Edward VI. You'd also be looking at whether there was a mid-Tudor crisis or not in the period of Edward and Mary's reign, the mid-Tudors. And then finally you'd be looking at, if you wanted to, the Pilgrimage of Grace. You might choose one of the 3. Pilgrimage of Grace was a rebellion in 1536, and you would be looking at the causes and the debates surrounding that. One of the things I want to say about coursework is that in A-level there's often not a right answer. What matters is how well you argue, how well you can put a case together, and how you can come up with your own view, your own interpretation. Historians disagree, students will disagree, teachers will disagree, and it's about coming to your own interpretation, your own view, your own opinion. Okay,
it
so
works.
that's what
Of course, it works. We get really good pieces. It works.
It is, and it's a good for those of you who are going on to university. Many of our students do, not all some employment, but for those of you who are going on to university, it's a good preparation for that, I think.
If not the best, really.
Yeah, it is good. And finally,
is this a question for both of us?
For both of us, really.
Right, okay. What is it? What's your favourite period of history? I can't do it, Gary. I can't answer it.
The thing I find with studying history, one, you're always a student of history. No matter there's always something to find out about. For me, I you'll never know it all, but I dip into different areas of the past and different countries. For many years, I read about the Romans. I was fascinated by the Roman world, and then there was another period when I was looking at sailing ships of the 18th century. That was great stuff. So I don't really have a favourite.
You say about the TARDIS all the time.
I do, yes.
But it is kind of like that, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Because if you had a TARDIS, you wouldn't just go and camp out in Tudor England, would you?
No,
You'd go and do something else.
Absolutely.
So I'm the same. I did. Obviously, I specialise in modern. That's where my degree is.
You like the really old stuff, don't you?
I like mega ancient, pre-ancient, sort of deep, dark walls of the past where nothing's written down, places, Gary's afraid to go. Go on, a favourite. You've got to pick one.
Oh, we've got to pick one.
If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I'd have said the Crusades.
I've got a soft spot for Tudor England, I've got to say.
So you've got to camp out in Tudor England.
Well, perhaps I would. And I'm still interested in the Roman world. But it's so difficult, this question. It depends which day of the week you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, I like new frontiers and things like that. So doing the Empire, I love stuff like that. And even the Witch course, talking about Salem and knowing that there's this physical boundary between 2 worlds. There's this puritanical British, offshoot world, and then just over the next hill, there's the American Indians with their own culture and their own way of doing things, and how those worlds just smack together is incredible for me. Hence why I love all this pre-ancient stuff. When at the end of the last ice age, 10,500 years ago, and what humans were doing at that point in time, I love stuff like that. Favourite? So you said Tudor England. You're going to go Tudor England.
I'll go Tudor England.
Oh. I'm going to have to go British Empire, Gary.
British Empire, okay.
Yeah, I think that might just be my flavour at the minute, I don't know.
That's
I'm going to have to
fine.
go British Empire. I'm going to have to go kind of Nile Valley sort of area, 1800s.
One thing I would say about the study of history is that it's something that you never get bored with, and it is the story of us. The more you study it, the more you realise the people in the past were just like you and me. Right. They had the same qualities and the same defects, and
And the same values, I mean, you can kind
Yeah.
of brush it right down. I mean, I love ancient history as well. You know, Gary was talking about that before, and we've got the history club to talk about, and even then, when the religion systems are so different, when that, you know, they're praying to the sun gods and Anubis and have different conceptions of like heaven and hell and things like this, ultimately they're people who love their kids and they like the fine wines or whatever you want. There's those consistencies in that human story, and I love that.
It's a fantastic subject, and I'm sure if you chose to do history here at QE, you wouldn't be disappointed. We both heartily recommend it. So,
obviously.
And hopefully, you know, what's going on in Bridging Week will help you to make your mind up and for history to be one of your choices. Just a little bit on the rest of Bridging. Tomorrow you get a chance to meet the rest of the history department. This quiz that we're doing, we're all going to do 5 questions apiece, so you'll get to see the other teachers as well. Do try and, you know, have a look at the videos that are being posted each day, because there's some really good fun stuff on there. And remember, on the Friday of this week, you will be able to ask us questions live, anything you like. So if there's anything we've not covered today, then please do either email us a question in advance or join that Zoom webinar and submit a question live. Okay, we'll be happy to answer it. Right, I think that's more or less it. So thank you for watching. I hope that's answered most of your questions. And that's it for now. Thank you.
We will meet.